Hi, I'm here to talk to you tonight about addiction. Now, I don't know about you, but my life has been touched by um, the addiction of alcohol. My brother and my father were both alcoholics, so I come with a little bit of knowledge, but mostly knowledge maybe as a child. What I've learned is that addiction is a dependence. It's a helplessness. Some say that it's a brain disease, just a bad habit that can't be stopped. Our text tells us it's a pattern of compulsive use. To have an addiction, a person must have several of the characteristics: the inability to stop, withdrawing from problems, or using the addiction, the substance, to take the place of the problem. We use more, the addict might use more than they intended. They might say, well, I'm just going to have one drink. When they really sit down, they have 5, 6, 7, or 8. Their withdrawal, their reduced involvement in the community, in their families, in their church, or even at work. There are several different kinds of addictions, of course, alcohol namely one. There's drugs, gambling, sex, shopping, eating, and smoking cigarettes, just to name a few. Out of all the addictions, alcohol is the most studied and the most common, next to nicotine. Alcohol is the third leading cause of deaths after heart disease and cancer. I think alcoholism is like a disease. It's an illness of the mind, body, and the soul. Biopsychosocial spiritual model is widely used around the globe in treating alcoholism. The social component of this method is the addiction relates to where a person opposed to why relates to the person opposed to why or how. Is it the peer group that you hang out with? Is it because you have family issues, job losses? It seeks to find out what the social component is, what's the driving force. Then, of course, there's the spiritual denomination. Spirituality is crucial in recovery because it is related to one's sense of meaning and why am I here? What's the purpose of all of this? Mind, body, society, and spirituality are all levels of biosocial spiritual model. Hope, guidance, and relationships are really the key in successful recovery. And the relationships part was something that I found interesting. I never realized how important the social aspect of addiction or fighting the addiction was in recovery. I also was surprised to find out that gender roles does make a difference, that women are so much more stigmatized than men in having an addiction. Somehow society finds it more acceptable for men to be addicted than for a lady. That was very surprising to me, but then as I thought about it, I guess that seems very true. Also, there's an increased addictions with the LGBT society. The book states mainly because of where they socialize, where they connect with each other, is usually in bars and clubs. So alcohol and drugs seem to be maybe the common element there. Maybe helps people feel at ease and more comfortable than they normally would. What I found very interesting was the AA's version, the acknowledgement that you're powerless over alcohol. I think that's true, or over alcohol or for any addiction. We're powerless to stop it. Thus, it's an addiction. I was interested too that negative punishment for all alcoholics doesn't have very good success rate. And it was kind of concerning for me because that is, in the United States, what is widely used to help the addicts. But we need to research more and realize that alcohol isn't the problem. It's how the person is responding to the stress or the real issue. Alcohol is just the cover. In AA, it says alcohol addiction is the problem. It goes through several ways to find out if a person is an alcoholic. They ask lots of questions. Is their life unmanageable? Have they hidden a bottle lately? Do they lie about where they're going? Do they lie about how many drinks they've had? Do they drink alone? All of these questions, if you had answered yes to several of them, then according to Alcoholics Anonymous, you have an issue. Are you drinking because there's a problem in your life? And what I thought was really great, their last statement when he says, your drinking is causing trouble in your life, and if you don't do something about it, drinking will end your life. I didn't realize that alcohol takes up 90% of a person's waking thoughts, of the addict's thoughts. Alcohol and drugs determine where you go and what's going on and what to avoid doing or who to avoid talking to. It was interesting to me to realize that the power that alcohol and drug addiction have over a person. Alcohol and drugs, according to AA, also says alcohol and drugs addicts are terminal illnesses, that they end in death. Well, I guess that's true, but I also am wondering still about the disease portion. Because I'm not sure, or I know for a fact, that a person doesn't choose cancer, and they don't have cancer to hide their problems or to feel comfortable in a social situation, whereas an addict might begin that way, more of a choice. And if it is a disease, then shouldn't it be treated by medical doctors in a medical facility instead of through counseling and through care like AA? Now, of course, this is true. Honesty and open-mindedness and willingness is crucial for regaining control of one's life. And I love the ending words of the AA video. If the person doesn't stop drinking, eventually the alcohol will stop them itself. And I thought, wow, that was a pretty powerful statement. Because addiction really has power over a person. No matter what addiction is, it really grips a person in every way. It affects them every way socially. My most interesting video that I watched was the Johann Hari video. It was the most interesting to me because he has a completely different way of looking and treating addiction. He says that our criminalizing drugs and alcohol has not helped the situation at all. As a matter of fact, it's made it worse. Using punishment to stop addiction isn't working, so why do we continue it? He also goes on to say that we have taken addicts, made them suffer because we believe that would deter them and it would give them an incentive to stop, but it hasn't. It hasn't working, and if anything, alcohol and drug addiction has gotten much worse. So then why? Why do we continue this treatment of addicts if it's not working? Well, Johann Hari goes on to say, what if addiction isn't about these chemical hooks that he talks about? These hooks that once you start something, you're hooked into never stopping it again. These addiction hooks. He says, but what if that isn't true? What if instead addiction is an adaptation to your environment, bonding? Either we bond with others in healthy relationships with family and coworkers and friends, or we'll bond with something else. But we're going to bond. Something else could include gambling, pornography, drugs, alcohol, cigarettes. There's a number of things. We will bond and we will connect with something because that is who we are. What stops people from excessively using is because we have bonds and connections with people we want to be present for. So I could have a couple of drinks, but I wouldn't want it to take over my life because of my environment. I have a good family, have a good life. I wouldn't want to miss that for alcohol. Now, I also found it interesting in the Recovering Rising book that I noticed on page 3, he also agrees with that. And I'll quote him. He says, "Walking mechanically among people I did not feel a part of, his disconnection from self and others has a multitude of roots, and that such haunting feelings of imposterhood are referenced in recovery stories across the globe." Again, just like John Hari says, we need to change what we know of addiction. Environment plays an important role. Now, also, he talks about in Portugal how the Portuguese decriminalized addiction and alcohol, and that they had a reduction of 50%. Instead, they used their money that they were using to imprison and have negative consequences for alcoholism or drug use. Instead, they used that money for microloans to help these addicts start new businesses and jobs for addicts. They would promise a company that if they would hire a certain addict, maybe to be a mechanic, that they would pay half the salary. This gave the addicts a reason to get up, a purpose in life, something important, maybe even more important than their addiction. As a society, we need to connect with people face to face. That's important. It seems we have traded materialism for true connection. And I thought what was just really amazing is how he says the opposite of addiction is connection, not sobriety. Well, as I look back on all that I've read and the videos I've watched, I can honestly say that John Harris' TED Talk was the most eye-opening. His main theme was connection, love, and real help, the opposite of what the United States and Britain normally do for their addicts. His ideas closely mirror that of what Jesus talks about. Jesus says we should be loving, sacrificially helping those in need, like the story of the Good Samaritan. Jesus always lifted up the hurting and challenges believers to do the same. Do unto others as you would have done to you. Now I know that if I was an addict and I was hurting and lonely, I wouldn't want to go to prison, and I don't think that would necessarily help me. But I do know making connections, having people walk along beside me and love me with unconditional love would make all the difference. And I think that would make all the difference for others too.